Gina DeLuca here. All right, I have some beautiful This Little Piggy Pigments mixed up here. I'm going for something kind of moody. The colors I have are Vinyasa, this beautiful gray, deep gray color. Violet Rain, which is a stunning deep purple. And Zimzalin, which is kind of a light purple with a bluish purple flash to it. Those pigments, I put a bit of Jo Sonja gloss varnish in the bottom of the cup, added some pigments to that. While wearing a mask. Always wear a mask when you are working with pigments. You do not want that in your lungs. So mix the Jo Sonja with the pigments and get that dispersed. And then I added some DecoArt modeling paste clear. This is matte modeling paste. I added some of that to it to thicken it up until it was a tube paste consistency. And then I added Floetrol to it, the same as the other paints, 1 part paint to 2 parts Floetrol. I have here, this white is a mixture of 50% DecoArt Satin Enamel and pure white, and Amsterdam Acrylic Titanium White. It is a 50-50 mix of those two, which once those are mixed together, then it is 1 part paint to 2 parts Floetrol. And for my base coat slash background, it is the Amsterdam Titanium White with a touch of Indigo added to it to create this lovely stormy kind of color here. So those paints are mixed, 1 part paint, 2 parts Floetrol, and then I add some water to it until I get the consistency that I'm looking for, which is, this is about a 2 on my consistency scale. It is making a mound, but it disappears pretty quickly. And it should be making a nice, thin, even stream off of your stick. If it is not even, oh, then you can't even see it when I'm holding my hand like that. I don't think I have the right angle today, but it should be making a thin, even stream off of your stick. If it gets thick and then thin, then you need to continue mixing because your consistency is inconsistent. I have a bad angle today, I think. My apologies for that. Before we get started, have you seen the Fluid Art Inspiration cards? If you have, you can fast forward about a minute, but if you have not, what we have are 52 cards. There are 42 technique cards. Each technique card has an associated video here on YouTube that gives you all of the information that you need, the exact paint, brand, color, consistency, the recipe, of course, the technique, all of the things that I can't fit onto a card. This is a picture of the painting in that video. These two, or this box here has a tip for this particular technique. These 2 boxes can be used together as a color palette, and you have the color palette that was used in this painting at the bottom. There are 8 bonus color palette cards. Each one has 5 color palettes. You can use all of the colors, just some of the colors, mix and match the bonus color palettes with the technique cards, and you have more combinations than you could ever paint in a lifetime. You can also use these color palettes for, you know, other forms of art, watercolor, quilting, what have you. These are available at my website, ginadeluca.net, and also at amazon.com. All right, the first thing I'm going to do is put some of my background color into my cup. Move these out of the way so I don't spill them. I'm going to put some paint on my canvas. I'm going to reserve a little bit in that cup. I always lay down a base coat because I want the paints to slide around easily and evenly. And if you do not have a base coat down, something has to stick to the canvas first, and if it is not your base coat, it is going to be your poured puddle. It is going to be the edges of your poured puddle that touch the canvas first, and then the center of the puddle is going to roll over the edges. And sometimes you get some really cool stuff that happens on the edges. And if you don't have a base coat, you will lose that. I like to leave as many options open as possible, which is why I use a base coat color that is in my painting. It is the background color. So if I decided I wanted to keep one side to keep the edge of the puddle and have some negative space, I have the option to do that. But also, if I were using a color that is not in my painting in my base coat and there are bubbles in the base coat that I do not successfully remove before pouring, those little bubbles can come up through your pour and create these little tiny cells that for me and the way my brain works, I feel like I need to go back and fix them. So I just eliminate that. All right, I'm going to eliminate these bubbles now with old Bernie 2 times. Never lates the first try. I'm going to pour from up high. I want these paints to sink as much as I can get them to. Okay. Again, from up high, allowing these paints to sink and blend and churn. So these aren't necessarily cell makers. Sometimes I can get some cells with them if I have just the right situation going on. But what I'm expecting to happen is for these satin enamels to do all of the cell making work and some of these pigments to attach to those satin enamels and blend and have some cool things happen. And now for the satin enamel. Always check your consistency before adding to your cup because the sauce may thicken upon standing, as this one did just a bit. Add just a couple of drops to water, a couple of drops of water to that. Okay, much better. And again, from up high. Okay, and I'm going to take some of what is left in here. So these satin enamels have been sitting for a bit. We'll see if I get reactions. Sometimes when the paints get old, they don't react quite as well, but I see a little something happening there, so I think we'll be okay. Another pop of the bubbles. right. Let's make a mess, shall we? I'm going to pour. I'm just going to let this paint work its magic. I might do a couple of wiggles, maybe a couple of little swirls, just to get some kind of interest going there. And as I get to the end, I like to be very careful because this part will be the focal point. I might change directions a couple of times here, get a little rose action. All right, I'm happy with that dismount. All right, going to pop these bubbles. So as I mentioned, when you have bubbles in your underlying layers, when those bubbles come up, when it is a cell maker, so these satin enamel paints are matte, and these matte paints have a hydrophobic effect when used with a glossier paint, which would be this background color. And those little tiny cells come up when I pop the air bubbles, and they continue to grow as I let my paint puddle percolate. And again, pop some more. So as I let these sit, these cells will get bigger. And then when I stretch them out, they'll get even bigger. So if you want big cells, try to let them develop before you stretch. That will help. I'm actually going to let this sit on its side in case I need to zhuzh up some corners. I see some spots that look like they're getting a little thin. As your paints sit, especially when you're letting the puddle percolate, you can get some setting up happening on corners and edges. I just saw something flashing out the window and I looked out, and unfortunately it was the sun. I looked just right at the sun and now I'm a little bit blind. I don't know why it was flashing like that. Must be something like a pinwheel or something. Hitting it at just the right angle. I think maybe my neighbors have one in their yard. Okay, that's looking better. All right. I am going to give this a stretch. Slowly. Patience is a virtue with a straight pour. Even though I have a base coat down, if I tilt too quickly, the center will still run over the edges of my puddle. I'm going to come across to this other direction here, opposite corner. Hoping that I get to keep some of these piggies and they don't get all swallowed up by the satin enamels. It's wild, even though I used 3 times as much piggy as satin enamel. You can see the satin enamel is very bossy. So maybe next time I use even a little bit less. Trying to get that mix just right where I get some cells, but I still get to keep my as many of the pig showing as possible. All right. And now I'm going to bring the weight of the paint back to center. The weight of the paint is going to be where it's moving the fastest. I'm going to adjust my composition. Okay. All right, that looks good to me. I am not going to torch this anymore. I don't want to encourage any more cell action. I like the way this looks. More cells are going to pop up. That's just going to happen. But if I torch it, that will definitely ensure that more cells pop up. But what I am going to do is scrape my edges. Very important step here, because if you don't scrape the edges, the paints on the edge will pull from the paints on top. As it drips, it will continue to pull. All right. I am going to let this sit and do what it's going to do. And then I will bring you in for a close-up. Back in a few. Okay, here it is. It's pretty, but the white really took over. There's no way to really tell right now how much of the pigs will show up, but it does look like they've blended into that satin enamel. It's hard to tell from the camera, but at least I know this section with this purple, that will be very piggy. Got to keep that. But we'll see what happens when it's fully dry, and really once it's varnished is kind of when that stuff really jumps out at you. But still pretty. Just was hoping for a bit more solid piggy, so I need to adjust my ratios, I think. Less of the satin enamel. So maybe that will be my next painting, to try to get these ratios correct so I can get more pigs than the satin enamel. But there it is. I hope you learned something. I hope you enjoyed. Please do like, share, and subscribe and all that good stuff. Do check out the description box below for links to my PayPal tip jar if you feel so inclined, my website, GinaDeLuca.net, where you can find my art and music and the Fluid Art inspiration cards for sale. You'll also find the link to my affiliates, Fluid Art Company being one of them, where you can get these pigments, and DecoArt, where you can get these satin enamels. And you'll also find the link to our Facebook group. Go make some art. Join us there. Post your masterpieces. Ask your questions. Get some inspiration. A good time is had by most. All right. That is it for me for today. Oh, there's some piggies there. Oh, zoom in. But I can see some of the piggies in that cell. But there it goes. All right. That's it for me for today. I hope y'all have a beautiful day. Now go make some art.